You're watching ET Now, India's #1 business news channel. I'm Ruchi, Bhatia, and this is our special budget programming. We are here in Faculty of Management Studies in Delhi University and will ask the next generation on the focus areas and priority areas for Finance Minister Arun Jaitley in the upcoming budget. Should he look at boosting growth, managing inflation, or look at creating jobs in a post-demonetization world? All that and much more over the next 30 minutes. This is going to be the third budget for Modi Sarkar. What should be the expectations? We've seen a lot happen over the last 1 year. We've seen Brexit, a new leadership in US. What has changed for India over the last 1 year? How does India stand out in the gloomy global world?
So I think all of us have heard about how government will try to revive demand because that has gone down. Demonetization took a big hit on the housing sector. So the housing sector fuels demand for cement, steel, and also brings in a lot of jobs to the economy. So we're likely to see tax cuts on home loans, and also the take-home pay we've read is likely to become higher to revive demand again.
Does anybody else feel that the focus should be on reviving demand in a post-demonetization world? Anybody who shares the similar opinion on?
Yeah. So basically, like she mentioned that after demonetization, India is still running with 50% of the cash that it had. So basically, what that does is that slows down the economy. And carrying forward the same point, I'd also like to mention that I'm also looking forward to the government presenting some facts on how demonetization has helped achieve the targets that it had set forth for.
Basically, demonetization, why the hit was that immense, because the focus of the government has been more on empowering the customer to go digital, whereas the focus could have been more on making the whole supply chain go digital, wherein you empower the suppliers of raw materials and even the farmers to sell their goods in a digital manner. If that could have happened, then the demonetization drive could have made an even more impact, I feel.
Right. Going digital is what is the need of the hour, isn't it?
And I'm Vikram Dhawan, and when it comes to the demonetization, I believe that there will be separate impacts on the rural and urban economy. The rural economy is morely cash based, and there is limited infrastructure for the digitalizations, especially the POS machines penetration in rural India is very low. And until that thing is checked, we are going to revert back to the cash economy after a certain period of time, and it is entirely possible that the growth we see after demonetization may not be an inclusive one. And in rural economy, what you can say, the income differentiation may even rise afterwards.
The jury is still out basically on the effects of demonetization. Even yesterday, the IMF, said that they're pegging the growth downwards. Do you think the government has taken the very important step of demonetization, perhaps without realizing the long-term impacts? Anybody who feels the same way about it?
I believe that government has not focused on the infrastructure, which is the primary need which should be there, because before creating a demonetization move, there have been a lack of internet penetration in India, and I believe that due to that, the digital economy which is being driven and which is the pet project of Modi government would not work out in that sense. So till 2025 there would be around 95% penetration of internet, and the time is not correct. Maybe the move is correct and the intentions are very correct of the government, but maybe what they could have done is timely currency denomination should have been created 2 years in advance, and the planning could have been better in that sense. In the long term, the projections and everything are very good, but in the short term scenario of 3 to 4 years, India has really gone back by the move of demonetization.
So anybody else who believes India has gone back due to the move of demonetization? I see you nodding your head.
I have a different view regarding this. We all knew that the growth rate would be decreasing due to demonetization. So it's a process. So demonetization started and the growth rate went down. So if we'll not cope up with the black money now, after again 10-15 years, we have to make this move again. So the government is trying to they are promoting digital money, they are promoting e-wallets, because we don't have to make this move again. So we all knew that the growth rate will be going down, and it is a long-term process, so that after 10-15 years we can have a market or a stage where there is no black money, so the interest rates and every other rate will be lower considerably, and the market will be growing ultimately.
So what should be done to revive the demand in the upcoming budget?
I think since demand has had a very big hit where FMCG companies are particularly having a third quarter degrowth of 25%, it is very important to change the tax slabs in India right now. Because tax incentives are one thing which will be a reviving factor for the economy right now, and people can, spend more easily because people are worried in spending even 1,000 rupees today, which was not the scenario some months back. So that could be one thing which can be done in the shorter run.
I believe that over a medium to long-term period, the demand is going to increase due to the changing demographics of India per se. But this cannot be one act solves all problems kind of thing. It has to be followed by both on the demand side as well as on the corruption side. On the corruption side, there has to be some follow-up, like whistleblower act has to be strengthened up, and there the declaration has to be strengthened up by political parties and central government employees, which has been not. Yes, Binami Acts, and has to be done. And on demand side, we also not only have to follow up on the monetary side, as my friend has said, but there has to be some physical as well as policy decisions that take care of this problem at the ground and grassroots levels. We cannot imagine or cannot say that we will have a long-term growth if we do not have the infrastructure. We cannot say that demand will be high if there is no job creation at the bottom levels.
Any more steps that the government should undertake to promote digital platforms? Anybody?
I'm Soumyati Banerjee. I feel that it's a serious problem because if you look at the current form of digital payments platforms, you either use a wallet or credit cards. Currently, for payments over rupees 2,000, there's a tax deduction which takes place for every digital payment. So there's a big pullback factor for any person who's willing to go online. So in order to promote this, the government should continue with the abolition of this tax, which it had undertaken during the point of demonetization. Secondly, the government should ensure that the payments banks, which have been, for example, of Paytm, they should give the people the option to transfer their money to other banks for this into a savings account without any tax deductions, because that will be a huge drawback for the people who have a very small savings account and are willing to switch back. So in that mind, in the minds of people who are in a dilemma, that would be a huge boost to switch to digital platform. Also, digital platform would be a very good enabler to tackle the corruption which occurs in the government levels. It will be bring more accountability into the system.
There are two things that we need to consider. First is that our government, the Reserve Bank of India, has not yet legalized the usage of PayPal or even Bitcoin. That is a major factor because in today's time there is a lot of necessity to purchase digital goods. Secondly, we should also recognize the roles that banks have played during demonetization. Not only they have exchanged the currency, they have actually enabled the customer to move towards digital platform, whether it be the issuance of more debit cards, rupee cards, and also the discounts available on e-commerce platforms. So I believe the government should not only legalize the usage of PayPal and cryptocurrency, but also they should also enable the banks to further issue the RuPay and other debit cards.
The idea is, of course, to have the bulk of your transactions that are currently being done in cash so that it should move to online. Anybody else who perhaps believes that incentivizing digital transactions should be the focus in the upcoming budget?
Yeah, actually, as like one of my friends pointed out, that the penetration of internet is quite low here. So the government can actually focus on the supply side of internet, that it incentivizes people to set up the infrastructure. So the penetration increases. If they give some, say, tax benefits on setting up infrastructure in the, say, rural areas, then we can have a supply which will eventually increase the demand, say, 2 or 3 years on. That way, the government should focus on having policies in the budget which help develop the internet infrastructure.
All right, focus on internet infrastructure.
Hi, my name is Apoorv. In continuation to this point about the internet infrastructure, I would also want to say, see, a lot of India's cash economy is the rural economy, and people there are not aware of digital transactions at all. They don't have the awareness or the know-how. So, like he said, talked about education. Education is really important at the rural level, because a lot of the cash economy is coming from there. And if we can focus on, if the budget can focus on incentives for people in the rural economy to make digital payments, and they can educate them, that will have a really big impact on the economy as a whole.
When it comes to the enabling the digital payment, the whole scenario of Indian system, the first thing is the security of that. There has been considerable doubts about the security of the apps that we are using, and it is not at the international level. So government has to step in at the very first point and create a kind of fund to make these things more secure. because dilution of trust into these things will take us a step back only. The second thing is that the arbitration process has to be stepped up very quickly. Indian judiciary is very slow at any kind of arbitration, and as we go forward to more and more digital payments, there are bound to be some disputes, and these disputes has to be resolved very quickly in order to facilitate the process. The third thing that the government can do is, of course, creating a fund for the education of the usage of these apps and usage of these payment systems in rural and hinter areas where there is no app infrastructure. They can come up with a non-internet based payment system also, because I believe that the government is working on that. This may be a major booster. And the fourth and the final thing is that the mobile penetration has to be leveraged at a very high level, because we have such a high level of mobile penetration, and if people get more comfortable by paying through mobile, it will lead to a better and less infrastructure intensive payment gateway system that we can have.
Right. We've discussed the impact of demonetization and what will it mean for consumption, but we'll discuss about creation of jobs and many more other sectors on the other side of this break. Welcome back. You're watching ET Now. I'm Ruchi, Bhatia, and this is our special budget programming that we're doing with the students of Faculty of Management Studies in Delhi University. Let me ask them that apart from MSMEs, agriculture and textiles, what should be the key sectors that Finance Minister Arun Jaitley should look at incentivizing in the upcoming budget?
So talking about job creation, 90% of India's jobs come from SME sector. So here this point would not hold in FMS because most of us are going to go to big companies. But talking about the SME sector, so what happens is that a lot of SMEs are not able to scale up. And the reason for that is that they don't have credit at the right rates. So if you take an average of the credit, the rate at which they can get loans from the banks is 24%. Which does not incentivize them because it's a very, very high rate, right?
There's a need to incentivize MSMEs.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
that is where most of the jobs are going.
Specifically about the textiles, if you look at the global scenario, the global consumption of textiles is falling. So if you look at the Make for India initiative, it will be difficult to boost manufacturing by just focusing on exports. So wherein the MSMEs will be able to come in firstly by giving them the tough fund, wherein increasing the percentage right now from the existing 15% to let's say 20 to 25%, wherein you give them the incentive for technology upgradation.
Right.
And not just technology upgradation, the second one will be making them go towards best practices and better practices for manufacturing, wherein you can help them go for TQM implementation, lean implementations, things like that. And secondly, the Skill India initiative still lacks a bit of teeth, so wherein the skilling of labor is required, and when that happens, I think the whole circle of empowering MSMEs will be completed at a much stronger rate.
Right, enabling startups, you know, the billion-dollar unicorns have done their bit, but what next for startups? Do you think tax incentives are perhaps the way to go?
Not just tax incentive, actually GST is quite a relief for all the e-commerce firms. But besides that, what these startups actually require is an infrastructure, because due to not having a past history or maybe a lot of funds, they find it difficult to get loans. So they seek investors, but when you seek an investor, you have to partake some share of your firm. So what I believe is that startup industries, startup firms who are dealing with technology, especially internet and broadband, they need to be strengthened, they need to be empowered. Now in the Digital India plan, what we saw was just one small village in Kerala reaching a speed of 1 Gbps. But if we can study the cases of countries like Romania and Korea, who are quite smaller compared to India, but their internet, their broadband speed is exorbitant. They are reaching as much as 50 to 60 Mbps. What I believe that if we can achieve as much as only 10% of that speed, we could not only enhance digitization, but we will also help the Indian economy in other aspects as well.
Right, you know, MSMEs, agriculture, textiles, startups, any other sector that we've perhaps left out in our discussion?
As we have seen, the for budget allocated last year for smart cities was very less. So I think in this budget the expenditure should be on again on the smart cities and Skill India, so that more FDI comes to India and more jobs will be there.
Apart from all the sectors which my friends have mentioned, two sectors which are overlooking are automobiles and real estate, which have been hit the most. For example, in December, the demand for each of the two sectors have fallen by more than 30%. So some immediate measures should be taken by the government in the upcoming budget so that they have an impetus in Philip.
In addition to that, I think infrastructure on a broader basis, like majorly the road construction sector, should be incentivized because that adds a direct value creation.
What kind of incentives are you talking about?
So I would like to say on a pointed basis that the government has shifted its focus from BOT to EPC model, the BOT model of construction to EPC. So maybe it should dole out more incentives for the private sector in the form of a initial funding for them, like initial viability gap funding, so that they will be able to enter into the project and then they will be able to fund it from themselves. So on a pointed basis, that budget on the expenditure part, the finance minister should look out for that.
The fact that RBI governor did speak about, we can't go ahead with interest rate subventions for a very long time. Do you think the government will be in a place and a position to dole out more subsidies, to dole out more interest rate subventions, or should they just, focus on doing quality expenditure? What is the view?
As rightly pointed out, I feel that subsidies in the long run will cost us a huge amount. Instead, if you look at the base or the backbone of our economy, which needs a lot of research and development, the government should increase expenditure on education and research. This would enable us to build a strong framework which would enable the vocational training of a large population base who would then be entrepreneurs and open their startups with the requisite knowledge, which is lacking at present in India. So the focus should be on increasing on the knowledge base of our country. As pointed out, 80% of Indian students don't have the requisite skills to earn a job on their own. So that is something which needs to be addressed by this budget.
When, as my friends have said, that our resources for doling out incentives and subsidies are very, very limited. And what we have not seen till now is that we have not studied the impact of our incentives and our subsidies to a larger extent. We have to shift the subsidies and incentive parts to high impact areas. And by high impact, I mean high job creation areas, because we are seeing a growth, no doubt about it, but it is a jobless growth. And if it continues, and as my friend has said, with the lack of the quality education system, the lack of the infrastructure that we are having, and the lack of the kind of demographic shift that we are seeing, we may say that we may be able to reap out our demographic dividend, but with these policies, this demographic dividend is going to turn into a demographic liability very soon. And until and unless we are able to provide jobs, not only to the people who are very skilled, but to the people who belong to the unskilled and semi-skilled workforce, and those people who are entering workforce every year, it is going to be a huge tough road in going forward.
As correctly pointed out, so other than the incentives and the infrastructure development, I think the government must also focus on setting up and operating a business easier for people who are investing in India. And as some of the recent surveys have pointed out, India ranks on the bottommost part when it comes to ease of setting up a business and operating in India. I think so that's one of the most important areas which the government must also focus on, other than of course infrastructure development and incentivizing the setting up of a business.
I want to focus on another important issue. Finance Ministry recently did a survey on what should be the focus areas for the upcoming budget, and a lot of people said agriculture. Do you guys believe that the focus for the upcoming budget should be on farming, on agriculture, and really bringing that section of our society and help them contribute into the formal economy?
What I see is that they should incentivize long-term infrastructure projects like on irrigation and power, rather than giving out subsidies or incentives to the farmers directly. Like they have given incentives on the credit card and insurance scheme right now, but irrigation projects should be more promoted so that they could be beneficial to the agriculture sector in the long run rather than in the short run.
Regarding the agriculture in specific, there are two types of farmers. One are the marginal farmers and one are the very big farmers. So it must be a provision that for very big farmers, where they are earning very high amount of income, they must be taken under the tax region, means they must also be liable to pay taxes, because agriculture in general is away from taxes. So even if these people are earning a lot and using the resources of the country, then they must be liable to pay the taxes.
That's also a political issue whether the farming income will be taxable or not. Anybody else who believes that farming income should be taxed in this budget? And do you believe the government has it in them to take this decision? I can see a nodding head from there. Well, let me come.
So, I mean, like we've already talked about agriculture. So our farmers really suffered in the past two monsoons. We didn't get much rain. And when we did get rain, we had demonetization. So economy and agriculture really suffered. So I think with the upcoming elections in the 5 states, the government's really they are going to subsidize the farmers because they're going to give a populist budget so that they get the votes as well.
Anybody else who believes we are in for a populist budget this time around?
So, if you see the past budgets, the government has tried to bring in long-term growth policies, because that's what Modi promised. But now in 2019, there will be elections and they only have like a year and a half to prove themselves. So, I think we're in for a populist budget, definitely.
Are we in for a populist budget or a popular budget? What should Finance Minister Arun Jaitley do?
Yeah, as we saw on 31st December when Mr. Modi was addressing the nation, I believe, was trying to change the way loans are given to the farmer. Basically, he said this time it's a loan rather than like a free money. They were giving a very low interest rate. So I believe he's trying to change the way money is given. So I don't think it will be a populist budget. It'll be like a slower change where he's trying to bring people to bring changes by themselves. So I believe the farmers will be given a better say in this and more incentivization, but it will be in a way which is acceptable and like better for the country.
Education and healthcare have been ignored sectors so far with respect to budget, and the upcoming budget, it will be great if the upcoming budget looks to focus on healthcare and education.
I think education is one sector that has not been given a lot of attention to. For example, if you look at the researchers in our country, the PhD scholars, the amount of money that they get as incentives is not anything compared to that in developing countries and even in developed countries and even developing countries like South Africa. So I believe that it is very important for developing country to develop new techniques. For example, in agriculture, irrigation techniques or farming techniques which will consume less water. So to incentivize and bring the brightest minds, keep the brightest minds within our country's borders, it is important that they get funded for their projects. And as you know, any kind of scientific activity takes a lot of funds into instruments, machines, and such and so and so. So universities need to be given a top priority in our budget. Secondly, in healthcare, the people who are in the lower strata of society need to be given a lot of focus for treatment in diseases such as AIDS, cancer, whose treatment costs a lot of money and people suffer a lot, and so government has to step in to alleviate their problems.
In the budget, if there will be some announcement regarding the education, there will be probably opening of 2 new institutions or 3 new institutions. I think that thing is diluting the scope of education and in our country and the quality of education. So probably there might be some allocation of budget that can be thought upon later, that what would be done with that budget. So rather than opening 2-3 institutions for the namesake for inclusion, wisely.
Right. Anybody else who believes that we should not look at just opening institutes, it should be quality education that the government should look at?
I definitely do believe that. See that we have good post-graduation colleges, we have good engineering colleges when it comes to government, but we don't talk about good government schools. So we should have good government schools, as my friend said, that we should have a good pay salary for the teachers.
There is a long list that the students want Finance Minister Arun Jaitley to focus on in the upcoming budget, but with that we're completely out of time on this edition. Many thanks for watching.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.